26th, I think it's the 26th episode or video of the old guys, gentlemen flippers. I guess I could have said that smoother. Any case, this is really an addendum to a recent review I did on the Shirogorov 95T that I got. And I said, well, I liked it. I didn't particularly like the large size of it compared to my other knives, although I'm getting a little bit more used to that. But the other thing I really didn't like is the flipping action was harder than I thought it should have been. And the closing action was too fast. Well, as you can kind of see, the closing action is what I consider to be perfect. It's kind of a controlled fall. And I have complete control over that as well. I can make that looser. And you can't see it, but it's a heck of a lot easier to flip now. I was getting a little bit of a sore finger if I flipped it for a while in the other case. So I put a post on the Shirogorov Facebook fan club. I think that's what it's called, Shirogorov Knives Fan. And a guy came back and said, well, you just need to push the detent ball in. Now, I've done that in some other knives successfully and unsuccessfully. One where I pushed it in too far, and then I was able to get it out, but then I was worried I'd never be able to keep it in there again, because basically you're kind of deforming the metal to get the ball in there. But it bugged me enough that even though I spent all that money, I mean, this is like an $1,100 knife, and I'm not a knife maker or a real knife expert, but the problem is I am kind of an engineer, and I thought, well, maybe I'll give this a shot. And I came up with another method that gave me a little bit more control, so I wanted to explain how I did it. First of all, hopefully you can see this well. This is like a cutout section of right here. This portion right here is that right there, and this is your lock bar, and the little ball is right in here. You probably can't see it all that well, but it's right in there, and you can see it down here. And this is basically a spring on the metal, and that little ball pushes into a small hole or detent in the blade that holds it in place. And then the action of you putting force on the flipper, you build up force, and then eventually the detent ball is overcome by the force and comes flying out of that hole, and you got the force required to flick it open. And then my problem is it was taking too much pressure to move it. And one thing I did know how to do is you could take this bar and you just bend it back, and you kind of pay attention to where it comes back to see how far you've adjusted it. But it was already dropping really quickly, and that would just make it easier because it means less force on the part of the blade that is not the detent. So this one suggestion of this guy to push this ball in further, because essentially there is a drilled hole through here that's just a little bit smaller than the outside diameter of the ball, and they press the ball in there, and it sticks because you're kind of deforming the metal slightly, and I think it's enough spring in the metal to hold it tightly. So what I did is I had a set of calipers, vernier calipers, and I measured the distance from here to here, and it was 4.18 millimeters. And then I measured the distance from here to here, and it was 3.51 inches. And take the difference, and it's 0.67 millimeters. So that's how far this thing is sticking up out of this thing. And I knew I wanted to reduce that. And I've had a couple of different ways of doing this. What I came up with now is one that took a little bit more control. And if any of you have a better way of doing this, I'd love to hear it. I'm also kind of limited with the tools I have. I don't have a press. I have a drill press, and I know you can use those. And I have a vise I think on the other balls what I used was a pair of vice grips. What I did is this is like a section of the vice jaw here, and here's the other section. So these sections close like this. This is the lock bar here with the ball in it. Okay. I got a couple of washers. Washers are made to be flat on both sides, and there's a hole in it, and I didn't want to have that interfering with stuff, so I set up one washer so the hole of the washer is away from this ball, and it's going to be pressing this way on the detent ball, and another one over here, again with a hole offset, so I've got metal here. The reason why I was doing that is that my jaws have teeth in them, and I didn't want to mar the blade handle at all. So this is a nice flat surface up against a nice flat surface of the knife. And then I was going to squeeze it shut, but since I really don't know, as I'm squeezing it shut, how far this thing is moving into the hole in the lock bar, I wanted to limit it at least. So what I did is I had a shim, a set of shims, and the largest one was 0.635, and I figured, well, even if I pushed it in to drop this from 0.67 to 0.635, that probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. What would that have been? That would have been 0.670 to 0.635. Sorry, I should have done this before. 3. So it would have been 0.035 inches that I would have moved it in. So I went ahead and I put it in there and I squeezed this just a little bit. Pulled it out and it remeasured everything and it didn't move at all. So I put it in again and pushed a little bit further. I pulled it out and I measured, and lo and behold, it was about 0.04, 0.05 millimeters. So evidently things must have moved around in here a little bit. Maybe this thing levered over. My jaw flats are not necessarily perfect. But I ended up with 0.05 millimeters movement into the lock bar. So I thought, well, maybe that's going to be enough. So I put that back in, or reassembled the knife, tried it, and it was perfect. The fall was a little bit faster than I like, so all I had to do was to tighten this, and that controlled the fall, and the flip is easy, and that's like nearly a perfect fall for me. But beforehand, what I would do is I would get like this, and it would just come slicing down, which was on the verge of being kind of dangerous. So that's one way with limited tools to tune the knife to the way you like it, with a little bit of risk involved. But it didn't really mar what would have been this side. There's no marks or anything, so it all turned out pretty well. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is, this is a free spinning pivot here, meaning right now if I put a screwdriver on here and turn this thing, that this would turn as well. See, and right now on this thing I'm using that the blue Loctite, and to undo stuff, now I don't know what they use in Russia, but to undo stuff you usually put heat on it and that loosens it up, but that didn't even do it for this one. So what I ended up doing was a real good advice from somebody, is you take this, and let's see if I move this out a little bit, and you press down on here, so you're putting pressure on the pivot through the blade, and that will lock up the pivot so you can turn it. Now obviously you can't press too hard on this or come way out here, because you have potential of bending things and pushing washers or bearings into washers and stuff. But that's enough pressure on there that'll lock it up, and then you can open it. Again, if that's a really stupid thing, please somebody say something. That works for me. So, hope you got some value out of that. I'm really happy with this thing. I wish it was, instead of being like nearly a 4-inch blade, more like a 3.5-inch blade. Because when I pulled this out at a restaurant recently and got several wows and, oh, that's a big knife. And I would rather not have a knife have that sort of a reaction with people. But I really like it, especially now that I've done the adjustments. If you have any questions or comments, please add them to the comments on the video. Hope you got some value out of this. And until next time, thank you for watching.